We often look up at the sky and wonder if there must be an alien civilization somewhere in space that will someday land on our Earth. But who knew that aliens could come from the depths of the ocean instead of from space? It was the most terrifying day in human history when aliens opened a portal in a large gorge on the surface of the deep ocean. A portal that connected two worlds emerged from that portal. A colossal monster so large that even the ocean couldn't drown it. This colossal monster was called Kaiju. Upon its arrival, it attacked the coastal city of San Francisco. It shattered even the largest buildings like straws and destroyed one city after another. The military used all its might to stop it. After nearly 6 days of hard work, thanks to tanks, missiles, and fighter jets, they finally killed Kaiju. But by then, Kaiju had already devastated 3 major cities. More than 10,000 people were killed in this devastation. The entire world mourned the loss of life in this disaster, but the incident was then forgotten and recorded in the pages of history. Just 6 months after that incident, Manila, Philippines, suffered a second Kaiju attack. Although humans killed the Kaiju after the devastating devastation, a third attack followed by a fourth. Then, humans realized that this trend wasn't going to stop, but rather, it was a sign of a more terrible disaster to come. All nations united to fight these colossal monsters like Kaiju. Humans needed a giant too. This is where the Eiger program was born. Eiger was a giant robot built by humans, controlled by 2 pilots. Each pilot acted as Eiger's right and left brains. For this, the pilots' brains were connected using a technology called neural link. This process, known as drift, involved the 2 pilots entering each other's brains and sharing their memories, thoughts, and emotions. When their thinking began to match, their brains merged. They were able to control the Jaeger simultaneously. The Jaeger moved in the same way they moved their bodies. The Jaeger proved to be an effective weapon for eliminating Kaiju. They destroyed them as soon as they emerged from the portal. Thus, thanks to the Jaeger, the fear of Kaiju had been eradicated from the hearts of people. But then one day, the military detected another Kaiju emerging from the ocean. Until now, humans had only encountered 2 types of Kaiju, but this time they were about to face a completely new kind. This was a third category of Kaiju named the Knife Head. It was the largest Kaiju ever seen. To deal with this Kaiju, the Jaeger robot's 2 brave pilots, Nasi and Raleigh, wore special armor and prepared. Nasi and Raleigh, both brothers, entered the head of the Jaeger with great enthusiasm, after which the head was attached to the body. After this, through the drift process, their brains merged and became one, creating the Jaeger's unique form. Life returned, and then Nasi and Raleigh piloted the Jaeger into the ocean. Meanwhile, Marshall Stack of the Jaeger Force was constantly monitoring them from the control room. The vessel was so massive that even after plunging into the ocean, only half of its body was submerged. In the same ocean, a ship was facing stormy waves. Those waves signaled something large approaching the ship. Just then, the monstrous Kaiju emerged from the depths of the ocean and stood before the ship like death. Trembling with fear, the ship's crew members prayed to God. Perhaps God had heard their prayers, because at that very moment, a massive hand lifted the ship like a toy and carried it to safety. That hand belonged to Jaeger, and Raleigh and Sissy had arrived to confront the Kaiju. The next moment, they both clashed with the monstrous Kaiju. After a couple of punches, the Kaiju was attacked with the plasma cannon in Jaeger's hand, sending the Kaiju flying away. It was impossible for any Kaiju to get back up after this blow. Nasi and Raleigh started returning, celebrating their victory. Marshall, from the control room, saw that the Kaiju was still alive. Marshall ordered Yancey and Raleigh to leave as quickly as possible, but before Nasi and Raleigh could do anything, the Kaiju emerged from the water like a bullet and attacked their Jaeger. Nasi and Raleigh tried to attack it again with a plasma cannon, but the Kaiju, sharp as a knife, severed Jaeger's hand. Nasi and Raleigh were mentally connected to Jaeger, so Raleigh also felt the pain of losing his left hand. Before they could recover, the Kaiju severed half of Jaeger's head and pulled Nasi out and ate him alive. Seeing his brother die in front of him was nothing less than a shock for Raleigh. On top of that, the entire weight of Jaeger had fallen on Raleigh's mind. It was difficult for a single person to carry such a heavy machine. It could have been fatal, but Raleigh somehow gathered courage and, with all his might, released plasma on Cashew from Jaeger's other hand, which killed Cashew but also injured Raleigh badly. He fell unconscious after reaching the shore along with Jaeger. Luckily, a local person saw him and took him to the hospital in time. The Kaiju's ingenuity had become increasingly cunning, aggravating Marshall and the world's security forces. Later, a Category 4 Kaiju emerged from the portal. These Kaiju not only learned how to fight the Jaegers, but also counterattacked them by understanding their tactics. This continued for the next 5 years. The Jaegers continued to be killed by the Kaijus. Initially, the Kaijus would arrive on Earth every 6 months, but gradually their attacks increased. Now, every week, a Kaiju would emerge from the portal and attack Earth. By now, almost all the Jaegers had been killed in battle with the Kaiju, and the Kaiju were arriving on Earth so quickly that it was becoming difficult for humans to create new ones in such a short time. Therefore, the leaders of all the countries decided to shut down the Jaeg program. They decided to build high walls around the coastline to stop the kaijus. Marshall was unhappy with this. He asked the leader for more time so that his team could make the Yaeks even more powerful, but the leader refused. However, he ordered Marshall to take his remaining Uyghurs to the battle station in Hong Kong, China. He would continue funding the program until a wall was built on the Hong Kong coast. Meanwhile, on the Alaskan coast, workers were building a strong iron wall. Raleigh was among those workers. After his brother's death, he had turned his back on the Uyghur program and was now living like a normal person. Raleigh and all the workers were working with the hope that this wall would stop the kaiju, but even that wall could not withstand the kaiju's power. In Australia, a kaiju broke through the wall and entered the city, wreaking havoc. Then an Eiger killed that kaiju. In fact, Marshall had upgraded the Eigers, which made people trust the Eigers once again. Meanwhile, Marshall went looking for Raleigh. Marshall told Raleigh that over the past 6 months he had tried to improve the Eigers as much as possible, and now he was about to undertake a major mission, but he needed a pilot for the Gypsy. This was the codename of the same Jaeger Raleigh and his brother had previously piloted. Therefore, in Marshall's eyes, there was no better pilot for Gypsy than Raleigh. Marshall boosted Raleigh's morale and convinced him to fight again. He took him to his battle station in Hong Kong. Once there, Marshall introduced Raleigh to Mako. It was Mako's responsibility to find a co-pilot for Raleigh. Marshall took Raleigh inside the facility where work was underway to upgrade the Gypsy. Now only 4 Jaegers were available. So, to save the world, Marshall took a major step. His plan was to fit a nuclear bomb into the most advanced Gypsy. They would travel to the kaiju portal deep in the ocean and detonate it, thus preventing the kaiju from ever returning to their world. They had to protect the Jaeger carrying the nuclear bomb. Mako then brought Raleigh to see his Jaeger, which they had upgraded to make it even more advanced. Meanwhile, 2 of Marshall's scientists were conducting research on kaiju. They had preserved the brain of a dead kaiju. The brain remained alive even after it was removed from its body. Meanwhile, biologist Newton learned some surprising information about kaiju. He showed Marshall a skin sample of the first kaiju that arrived on Earth 5 years ago and a kaiju that had recently died in Australia. He explained that the DNA of both kaiju was identical. This led Newton to deduce that all the kaiju that had ever arrived on Earth were clones, meaning biological robots. Newton wanted to enter the brain of the kaiju to gather more information about it, just as the 2 pilots of the Jaeger used to enter each other's brains through the drift process. However, Marshall refused to allow this because he feared that the load of the brain of a giant creature like the kaiju would mash Newton's brain for a while. Mako and Marshall then began the process of selecting Raleigh's co-pilot. To become Raleigh's co-pilot, the selected candidates had to possess Raleigh's fighting skills, and their thinking skills had to match Raleigh's. Only then could their minds unite to control the Jaeger. However, none of the candidates could match Raleigh's skills. Mako chose Raleigh. The 2 fought fiercely, and the match was evenly matched. Mako's thinking and fighting strategy matched Raleigh's perfectly, so Raleigh decided to make Mako his co-pilot, but Marshall was reluctant. Mako had gone through a difficult past, and Marshall feared that Mako's past might distract him from his mission. On the other hand, despite Marshall's refusal, Newton was going to connect with Kaiju's mind. He connected a part of the drift machine to Kaiju's brain, placed a device on his head, and turned on the machine, allowing him to enter Kaiju's mind. He witnessed some astonishing sights from the world of the kaiju, but within seconds, Newton's brain was under so much pressure that his nose started bleeding and he lost his consciousness. Luckily, Newton's partner saved his life by shutting down the machine at the last moment. Meanwhile, at Mako's insistence, Marshall had chosen him to be Raleigh's co-pilot. Before the battle, Marshall began a trial run of the newly upgraded Jaeger Gypsy. Through the drift process, Raleigh and Mako's brains merged, and Jaeger came to life. Just then, Newton's partner came running to Marshall and told him that Newton had learned something about the kaiju. Marshall immediately went to Newton. Newton was in a bad state, but he was alive. Marshall asked him what he saw in the kaiju's mind. Newton replied, "My guess was absolutely correct. These kaiju are biological robots created by an alien civilization and are sending them to Earth to destroy humans. These aliens have conquered planets one after another and established their colonies there. Then, when all the resources on those planets are exhausted, they leave in search of another planet." Marshall was also surprised to hear this. Newton further explained that this is not the first time. When those aliens sent kaiju to Earth, in fact, they had sent kaiju for the first time in the era of dinosaurs, but at that time, the Earth's atmosphere was not suitable for those aliens to live in, so they waited. But now, when due to pollution spread by humans on Earth, the amount of carbon monoxide gas is increasing, the ozone layer is decreasing, and the water has also become polluted, now the Earth's atmosphere has become suitable for those aliens to live in. Hence, to fulfill their unfinished purpose, they are sending kaiju to Earth again, and the kaiju they sent till now were nothing. In the future, they are going to send kaiju even more dangerous than them. Hearing this, Marshall said, Newton, I need more information about those aliens, so you will have to look into Kaiju's brain once again. Newton proudly agreed to this, but he said that the brain of the kaiju they had was damaged. To enter Kaiju's brain again, he needed another brain of kaiju, and that too a living one. On this, Marshall sent Newton to a man named Hannibal Chow, who lived in the same city. He provided the address of a man who, immediately after killing a kaiju, would remove their organs, such as brains, livers, and other organs, preserve them, and illegally sell them on the black market for exorbitant prices. Newton immediately left to meet Hannibal Chow. Meanwhile, Raleigh and Mako's Jaeger was undergoing a trial run. The synchronization between their minds was working perfectly, but suddenly Mako became lost in a flashback, distracting her from her goal. Mako was reliving a childhood incident in which a kaiju attacked the city, killing Mako's parents. A frightened Mako was running from the kaiju alone. This drift process made Mako feel as if she was reliving those memories, and because Raleigh's brain was also connected to Mako, he could also see those memories. Raleigh tried to convince Mako that all this wasn't real, but Mako couldn't control herself. Then, a Jaeger from one of those memories attacked her. Mako was so frightened by these events that she activated Jaeger's plasma cannon, which was about to blow up the entire facility. Seeing this, everyone in the facility fled, but at that very moment, the operator disconnected the power supply to the entire facility, shutting down Jaeger as well, and Mako was shaken out of her memories. What Marshall feared happened. Marshall immediately changed his decision to make Mako Raleigh's co-pilot. Meanwhile, Newton, searching for Hannibal Chow, went to his secret base. The place was nothing less than a paradise for a biologist like Newton, as Chow's men had preserved every part of kaiju there, even preserving the parasites found in Kaiju's body. Just then, Chow arrived. Newton told Chow that he needed Kaiju's second brain. In fact, to operate such a massive body, Kaiju also has two brains, one in the head and the other near the spine. Newton needed the second brain because it could be safely removed from the Kaiju's body. Hearing this, Chow asked Newton, "What will you do with the Kaiju's brain?" Newton replied, "I need to enter the Kaiju's brain through the drift. Every Kaiju's brain is connected to the aliens who created them. So by entering the Kaiju's brain, I want to extract information about those aliens." Hearing this, Chow looked into Newton's eyes. Seeing his eyes red, Chow realized that Newton had already entered the Kaiju's brain through the drift. Upon learning this, Chow suddenly said, "You don't know how big a fool you've made." Meanwhile, Marshall's team detected two Kaiju emerging from the portal simultaneously. This was the first time two Kaiju had emerged from the portal simultaneously. This worried Marshall and his team. Marshall prepared his 3 Jaegers to deal with them. The 3 Jaegers landed in the ocean, after which a fierce battle broke out between the Jaegers and the Kaiju, but the 2 Kaiju were both extremely powerful and cunning. They crushed 2 of the Jaegers along with their pilots. Seeing this, the pilots of the 3rd and most advanced Jaeger confronted the Kaiju. They picked up a Kaiju and threw it away and killed it. They activated missiles to destroy it, but before they could attack, the 2nd Kaiju released an electromagnetic pulse from its back, which caused a power outage in the entire city, and the Jaeger's power also went off. Marshall and his team were stunned to see this new power of the Kaiju. Marshall told his technician to restart the Jaeger immediately, but the technician said, "We can't do anything now, sir, because once it shuts down, the Jaeger's system takes 2 hours to reset. It's our bad luck that all our Jaegers run on electricity." Then Raleigh said, "Not all, Marshall. Perhaps you're forgetting that our Jaeger Gypsy is an old model that runs on nuclear power. Before that Kaiju destroys even the last one, you'll have to send me to battle with Mako." Hearing this, Marshall was lost in thought. On the other hand, a Kaiju was hovering around the stalled Jaeger like death, while the other Kaiju headed towards the city. Meanwhile, in the city, when Chow came to know that this time 2 Kaiju had come out of the portal, he quickly left the city and ran away. Newton started preparing for the mission. Meanwhile, Newton nervously asked, "What could be the meaning of 2 Kaiju coming together?" Chow replied, "You're the reason for this. Didn't you know that drift is two-way? If you entered the Kaiju's mind, then those aliens must have also peeked into your mind at that time. Now they know that you're planning to stop them, so they've sent another Kaiju to kill you, and that Kaiju is coming here to find you." Chow told Newton this and drove him away. With this, Kaiju entered the city and started searching for Newton, suppressing the city. Newton, frightened, hid in a bunker built to hide from Kaiju along with the people of the city. Meanwhile, in the ocean, Kaiju was continuously attacking the pilot of the closed spacecraft. Then the pilots came out with flare guns and fired directly into Kaiju's eye. However, this didn't even hurt Kaiju. On the contrary, he became even more angry, and Kaiju moved forward to crush them both. But at that very moment, Raleigh and Mako arrived with their Jaeger, and since Marshall had no other option, he had to make Mako Raleigh's co-pilot. Upon arriving, Raleigh and Mako first ripped the organ that emitted emitted electromagnetic pulses from the kaiju's back and began punching him. Then, the kaiju picked up the other kaiju and threw it onto the seaport, attacking it like an animal. Raleigh and Mako then picked up containers at the seaport, hitting the kaiju on both ears. They then repeatedly attacked the kaiju with a plasma cannon, blowing it to pieces. The kaiju was killed. Meanwhile, the other kaiju, searching for Newton, had reached the bunker. With a single blow, he tore a hole in the bunker's roof. It was now impossible for Newton to escape. The kaiju stuck his long tongue in to grab Newton. But just then, Raleigh and Mako arrived. Seeing this, the kaiju abandoned Newton and ran towards them. Raleigh and Mako had brought a large ship with them. They rescued the other pilots from that ship. They beat the kaiju like a rag, but then the kaiju attacked them with its tail, knocking them away. The kaiju then grabbed them in its claws and spread its massive wings, soaring into the sky. The kaiju, carrying Raleigh and Mako's Jaeger, began to escape Earth's atmosphere, causing Jaeger to run out of oxygen. Then Raleigh and Mako snatched a sword from Jaeger's hand and slashed the kaiju's stomach, freeing them from the kaiju's claws. They began falling wildly towards the ground with Jaeger. Falling from such a height was certain, but Raleigh and Mako activated the rocket thruster on Jaeger's chest, slowing their fall, and they landed safely. Marshall was delighted with Raleigh and Mako's bravery. Marshall then set about planning to blow up the alien's portal. Meanwhile, Newton, fearing for his own life, returned to Chow and this time threatened him and demanded that he take the kaiju's brain. On being asked, Chow brought Newton along with him to the dead body of the kaiju that had fallen from above and died. His team had entered inside the body to extract the internal organs of the kaiju, but unfortunately the kaiju had suffered brain damage. Suddenly the team heard a sound like a heartbeat inside the kaiju, hearing which they all got scared. Newton also heard that sound on the walkie-talkie. Hearing that sound, he understood that the kaiju was pregnant. Then in the next moment, the baby kaiju suddenly came out by tearing its mother's stomach. Seeing this, everyone started running away from there in fear, but Newton fell down in a hurry. Newton was about to become the first meal of the baby, but the baby kaiju's neck got entangled in its own umbilical cord, due to which it suffocated and died before reaching Newton. Just then, Chow arrived there. It was as if Chow had found a treasure in the form of the baby kaiju, and he was about to grab it too. But suddenly, the baby kaiju woke up and swallowed the Chow alive. But while trying to escape, once again his umbilical cord tightened around his neck, and this time he was completely killed. Meanwhile, on the other hand, Marshall's team got information that this time the aliens had sent 2 more kaiju to Earth. But the strange thing was that instead of coming out of the ocean, those kaiju were hovering around the portal. Actually, the aliens had come to know through Newton's brain that humans could fly to the portal, and they were planning to invade the alien world, so they deployed kaiju to guard the portal. However, Marshall remained undeterred. He immediately asked the technician to prepare both Jaegers. Meanwhile, Newton called his partner to join him with the drift machine and baby kaiju. He was ready to peer into the minds of the aliens once again through baby kaiju's mind. This time his partner also decided to join him in this task so that the load on the kaiju's mind would be better handled. Then, they both connected to the machine and entered the minds of the aliens. Newton and his partner, entering kaiju's mind, discovered something that worried them. They immediately left for the battle station to alert Marshall and his team of the danger. But by then, Marshall had already left to execute his plan. This time, Marshall himself was aboard a Jaeger carrying a nuclear bomb with a co-pilot, and Raleigh and Mako were following him in their Jaeger to protect him. Descending into the depths of the ocean, they moved closer to the portal. During this time, the 2 kaiju were hovering around them, but strangely, they weren't attacking them. Just then, Marshall's Jaeger arrived very close to the portal, and Raleigh and Mako were right behind them. This was the perfect opportunity to drop the nuclear bomb in the portal. But then Marshall noticed something fishy. He noticed that the kaiju were nowhere to be seen, as if they were wanting Marshall to drop the nuclear bomb into the portal. Meanwhile, Newton and his companions arrived at the battle station. Newton explained to Marshall that the aliens had designed the portal in such a way that it scans the kaiju like a barcode and allows it to pass through, so nothing other than a kaiju can pass through. Newton further explained that the only way to drop a nuclear bomb into the portal is to throw the bomb into the portal along with the corpse of a kaiju. While Newton was explaining this, the technician detected another kaiju emerging from the portal. This time, the aliens had sent a brand new Category 5 kaiju, the largest ever. And it was a powerful kaiju, meaning they now had to face 3 dangerous kaiju. But Marshall wasn't afraid at all. He was ready to fight them. Raleigh and Mako were also fully prepared to support Marshall in this fight. But suddenly, a kaiju attacked Raleigh and Mako from behind. Raleigh and Mako grabbed the kaiju's neck and took the sword from one of Jaeger's hands. They were about to cut its neck with the sword when another kaiju came quickly from behind and uprooted the sword hand and moved ahead. Meanwhile, Marshall and his co-pilot were battling the giant kaiju. Here, two kaiju had given a tough time to Raleigh and Mako. Just then, the kaiju opened its mouth and came to attack them quickly. But Raleigh and Mako took the sword from Jaeger's other hand and thrust it into the kaiju's mouth, tearing it in half. But the two kaiju were still alive. On the other side, Marshall and his co-pilot severely injured the giant kaiju, but then the other kaiju also started moving towards Marshall. Marshall now understood that their escape was impossible. Marshall said to Raleigh and Mako, "Raleigh, Mako, your Jaeger is a walking nuclear reactor, so now you have to blow up the portal. I'm going to clear the way for you." Saying this, Marshall detonated the nuclear bomb in his Jaeger, causing such a massive explosion that for a moment, all the water in that area of the ocean rose up, and the fish lying on the ground started fluttering. The next moment, the ocean water returned with a jolt, but this jolt caused even more damage to Raleigh and Mako's Jaeger. Meanwhile, thanks to the sacrifice of Marshall and his co-pilot, one kaiju had died in the nuclear explosion, but there was no trace of the largest kaiju. Raleigh and Mako, not wanting Marshall's sacrifice to go to waste, picked up the kaiju's body and started moving towards the portal so that the world could be saved. They could have entered the portal with the help of the corpse and blown it up, but then the huge kaiju appeared before them. It's not known what kind of material the kaiju was made of, that it had survived even a nuclear explosion. But at that very moment, Raleigh and Mako turned on their Jaeger's jet and grabbed the kaiju and jumped into the ravine, deep in which the portal was located. They thrust their swords into the kaiju's body and began rapidly falling into the portal. During this, the frantic kaiju was continuously destroying their Jaeger, due to which the oxygen inside the Jaeger started to decrease. Then Raleigh turned on the rocket thruster on Jaeger's chest, the fire of which burnt the kaiju, and finally the kaiju died. With this, they managed to escape inside the portal with the help of the kaiju. Mako's suit's oxygen had become very low, so Raleigh put Mako in an escape pod and ejected him back to Earth and set out alone towards the other end of the portal. As soon as he emerged from the other end of the portal, Raleigh's Jaeger had entered the aliens' planet. With this, Raleigh turned on Jaeger's nuclear reactor, which was about to explode in 60 seconds. After this, Raleigh also boarded an escape pod. On the other hand, the aliens were stunned to see Jaeger on their planet. As soon as Raleigh ejected his escape pod towards Earth, there was a huge explosion in Jaeger which destroyed the portal. Along with this, a large population of aliens was also wiped out. Luckily, by then Raleigh had come out of the portal. Meanwhile, seeing the destruction of the portal at the battle station, a wave of happiness ran through all the people. Thanks to Raleigh and Mako, the world had won the war against the aliens. Both of them came out of the ocean safely. Now, along with the minds of Raleigh and Mako, the strings of their hearts were also connected to each other. They expressed their love for each other, and with this, the story ended here. Friends, many of you are saying that our videos are not reaching you. For that, after pressing the subscribe button, click on the bell icon of notification and select the option of all so that the notifications of all our videos can reach you. Thank you.